Today is September the 30th, 2013. I will be interviewing Billy Gutow. My name is Nancy Ungerman, and the videographer is Ruth Andrus. Hello.
Hello.
We'll start at the beginning. Well, not quite at the beginning, but where you were born and where you lived growing up.
Okay. I was born in Dallas on September 27th, 1941. The first place we lived was an apartment on Richard Street, which I have no idea what that apartment looked like, but I absolutely know that was where it started.
Uh-huh.
Then we went to Palo Pinto, where we lived in a fourplex for a number of years.
What area is that?
Well, Palo Pinto is probably closer to Lakewood, East Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Richard's the same thing, all on East
Mm-hmm.
Dallas. We went from Palo Pinto, then we went to Junius, which is more by the Lakewood Country Club, in a very small house, much closer to Samuel's Street. Then from there, we moved to Hawthorne, which is on Oak Lawn, off of Oak Lawn and Armstrong in that area. From there, we moved to Centenary to Mason-Dells, and then I got married, and then a whole new life began.
Move some more.
Yeah.
Were your parents born in
My father was born in Newark, New Jersey, but came to Detroit when he was 2 years old.
He was born in
Newark,
Newark.
New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mother was born in Toronto, Canada. And then they came, and my grandparents, my mother's parents, actually my mother's mother, my grandmother, was born in Scotland, in Glasgow. And then they moved
In Scotland?
In Scotland. And they moved from Scotland, then they moved to Toronto, where my grandmother met my grandfather, who I never met because he was killed in a car wreck with two cousins, and I think there was an uncle, and they were in the insurance business, and they were on the way to Chicago or coming back from Chicago. The only one to die was him, so I never knew him. And Mother was about 12 years old at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So their name was Shankman. Then then my parents got married in 1939, December 17th, and they moved to Dallas. Actually, my father came here about 6 months earlier from Detroit to work with his uncle, who was an old-time Dallasite in the scrap business, a guy named Stein, and was a great uncle of mine. I don't know if he was so great, but he was a great uncle. He was married to my grandmother's sister. Anyways, my dad came here after the 6 months, about 2 months after he and my mother got married. My father quit his uncle by marriage and opened up his own little business, if you call it that. He borrowed $200 from my great-grandfather, my mother's grandfather, and they bought a little pickup truck. And he would go out and pick up scrap in the morning, clean it at night, sell it the next day. And that's one of the reasons we got moved out of that first apartment, because he was cleaning the scrap and they wanted him to quit doing that in the garage. So he had to find someplace else he could do it. He finally bought a little yard. So anyways, that's the beginning. I don't know what schools I went to.
Well, we'll get to that, but I still even want to go back before that.
Okay.
To see if there, I guess, any roots in Russia or Poland or.
Well, we know there was some roots from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Was from Poland.
Mm-hmm.
Even the ones that wound up in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they were stopped. Was in, and my grandfather, who came over, I guess about. Let's see, my dad was born at 17, so I think my grandfather came over in about, I'm going to say 1908, 9, something like that. And then he met actually, I don't know why he went to Detroit, but that's where I think he met my grandmother, because a lot of her family was in Detroit already, on that side, on my father's side. When they came over here, our name is Gutow, but there was another group called Gutow, and that part of the family went to Colorado, and they were in Denver, and there was somebody that did a tree once years and years and years ago, and where, I guess you come over, your name is Gutow, well, the guy decided my grandfather's father's going to be Gutow, and that's the way that thing came about. One of the interesting things, which I'm going to only leave for a long time later, was that my brother is very involved in a lot of things, and has been Jewish for years and years. He even became a rabbi after he was a lawyer. But he was giving a speech one time in Arizona, and this was probably in the late 80s, middle 80s, and a lady comes up to him. I don't know whether it was for American-Israel Public Affair, what that speech was. But anyways, a lady comes up to him and she says, we're related to you. I'm related. He said, really? She said, yes. Your grandfather's sister, who we didn't know anything about, is my mother. And she's still alive. And she lives in New Jersey, and she's in a home, and I have a sibling that lives in New Jersey, and she's still alive. And so they talked for a little bit. My brother then got on a plane soon after, did one of these things, except I think it was just a voice deal, and went to visit her. And the thing that came out of it, which I've always remembered, which I thought was very cute, was he was talking to her and going through what her parents did. And so I have always been in the real estate business, and she said, she didn't know that, I've never met the woman. She said, my father in Russia or in Poland was in the real estate business, but he wasn't very successful. So I always thought, well, that's really my line, right? He wanted to very, anyways, right. So that's that part of that story. So then, as I was born in 41, my sister born in 44, my brother was born in 49, my other brother was born in 57. My youngest brother died in 1992. He was with his wife. They were on a vacation in England, and a truck came over and they were on a bicycle and wiped him out, and she was right there when it happened. And so that's what happened. My father got cancer very young. He died when he was 61 years old. My mother had cancer, and she died when she was like 77 years old.
Do your brothers and sister live in Dallas?
My brother lives in New York City. I just spoke to him 2 days ago because it was my birthday 3 days ago. I talk to him often. My sister has Alzheimer's and lives in Houston. She has 2 sons that live there. And they took her there about 3 years ago to put her into a hospital that could take care of Alzheimer's patients. She doesn't know and hasn't known for at least 2, well, she probably hadn't known for 3 years. She doesn't know anyone, and it's a very sad situation because she can't walk, she doesn't walk, she can't get out of bed. She's in the last area. Although obviously she doesn't want to die because there's been the last 2 summers she had pneumonia, and the doctor said she's not going to make it, and both times she's rallied, and I don't know whether this is good or bad. That's my feelings. Anyways, she lives in Houston now, and and we see her about 4 or 5 times a year.
Growing up, were you raised in a religious home? I'm just wondering about your brother who became a rabbi.
We were raised in a very interesting religious home. When my parents came here, they kept kosher when they were first married. Now remember, they were young. You think she was 20, he was 24. He was 22. She was 20. They didn't have a lot of money, but there was one kosher butcher. He was very famous for, you went in there to see him, and he went to tell you what you were going to buy. And by the time I was born, there was no more kosher food in the house. So we quit keeping kosher, or they quit keeping it. And then
this was here?
Dallas,
they had a kosher? Yeah.
Yes, everything was in kosher. I can't think of the guy's name, maybe Fromm or something.
Fromm.
Was that? Okay. So it's, so then we go, as we as I got older, I guess I was 5 or 6 years old, we went to Shereth Israel, conservative synagogue, and we went there from that time, and I met enormous amounts of my best friends today. We're going to Shereth Israel at that time, and we were in the classes to get Leon Mello. You may know Leon and Roger. But I grew up there, and I went there till I was bar mitzvahed there. I went to Hebrew school, which was not necessarily a part of the Shereth Israel at that time. I got graduated Hebrew school, confirmed out of Sunday school, graduate work in Hebrew school, and know nothing about it. Did it because all my friends were going there. But that was our life. And every Saturday afternoon as we got older, we used to go over to a guy's house named Pinky Silverman at about 4 o'clock, and we would learn the prayers of whichever the prayers were going to be, whether it's Shacharis, whatever it needed to be. He would spend time, and then we'd go out and play football. I think the football was, and Marty Cohen, the doctor, was my friend that always has been. Just played golf with him the other day. And we had a group of guys that this was part of our training. We went into Young Judea as we got older. From there we went into AZA, and then a lot of us wound up going to college together.
Name some of those people.
Okay, well, the people that you wouldn't know, or y'all were maybe, was Leon Mello, a guy named Albert Ballas, a guy named Marty Cohen. These are guys I went to Hebrew school with. There was Leon and Roger Mello, of course, Stacy Roback, Harvey Stahl. We were 4 of us, Harvey and Stacy and Leon and I were inseparable for a number of years, but before we got even bar mitzvah, we always had a group. And Carol Aaron was part of our group that went to Sunday school at Shereth Israel, and and a girl named Marilyn Heckman, who these are all Dallas families. So we would always go out every Saturday after services, and maybe we would walk downtown and go to a movie, and then some of us would take a bus home or somebody would pick us up. That was, we were coming out of Shereth Israel. And then then I was bar mitzvah downtown, South Dallas, and very quickly after that we moved into, Shereth Israel moved over on Douglas, probably when I was like 14 years old or something. So then the friends of mine, Gary Zelazny and Charles Zelazny moved in, and Ned Siegel and Dickie Fogel came to Dallas. These were our friends. These are still my friends. I went to lunch with Dickie yesterday, and we're still very, very close. Bruce Lipshe became a very close friend of mine when I went to camp, when we were, which was like actually right before we went to camp, he came to higher school. They had moved from Amarillo, and that's where he and I met, and we wound up at camp in 1953. That was Camp Wakanda, and I guess it's called Camp Sabra now. When I went there, it was an all-boys camp, and it was owned by a guy named, actually it was owned by his brother, Harry Kessler, but Benny Kessler ran that camp. We had a polio epidemic there. It was also the time I think the war was over in Korea that year. There were a lot of things happening in 1953, but we were stuck at this camp because we had to have gamma globulin shots. My mother and dad were coming. It was an 8-week camp. The Rudmans went to that camp. Billy Sunshine went to that camp. We had a lot of people from Dallas that we all went to camp together. During the time of when we couldn't leave, there was in the middle, when they found out there was one person with polio, they decided nobody could come up to the camp. There was supposed to be Parents' Weekend. And it's about 500-600 miles to the Ozarks. So my mother and dad had already sent a note and said that, sent me a letter or called to me and said, we're not going to come up for this one night. We're not going to drive up there and then, drive back. And so, we love you. We'll see you in another 4 weeks. Well, the day before that happened, that's when they knew that we were under quarantine. And so the camp, at 11 o'clock on that night before to see people, sent out telegrams to every family saying, you cannot come into the camp. You have to go across the lake and we will bring all of the kids by on a boat, and you can wave and everybody will wave.
Mm.
But I knew I wasn't worried because I knew my parents weren't coming. So about the middle of the day, the next day, they came and got me and said, you need to go to Benny Kessler's cabin. I said, really? Okay. I mean, I'm 11 years old, going to be 12. So I went up there, and my parents are there. And I'm looking, I mean, I'm a kid, I was, why are you here? You know, first you said you weren't even coming. Oh, we were coming. This is my mother. Oh, we were coming. They drove, as soon as she got the letter that night that said, you cannot come to the camp. So that's 11 o'clock at night, they get in. She says, get in the car, Al, we're going up to the camp. They never stopped, they never went to the hotel, they right into the camp, and there they are in the cabin. And it was so typical of my mother that when it was going to happen when she wanted it to happen. So they drove up, we saw them, and then they drove back the next day, that day.
Good story.
That is...
Where's Sabra?
Sabra is Wakanda. I mean, Wakanda, that's in the Missouri Ozarks, which is the same, and I think most people, a lot of kids from this city go there. It's now a boys and girls camp. My granddaughter went to that camp once. It was a couple of years ago. What?
I don't know, but tell me, you went to what college? What high school did you graduate from?
Well, we started off, I went to Higher Elementary, then I wound up at Holland Park Junior High School, and from there I went to Hillcrest High School. We moved over to Mason-Dells. So from there I went to the University of Texas, then I went to SMU, and went to SMU Law School and graduated law school there.
What's the date on that?
Did I graduate law school?
Mm-hmm.
Graduated law school in 1965. I was there on a 3-and-3 program. Did that three undergraduate and 3 law school. And then the interesting part about that was I was 20 years old when I went to law school, didn't really understand the plan, but knew I wanted to move on. Well, my first year in law school, I got a degree from SMU in business. It was a BBA with a major, and this degree comes to me the summer after my first year in law school, and I said, I didn't know I was getting a degree, in business. I was so happy. Now, if I can't pass law school, at least I've got a degree to move on. So anyway.
Any way you can get it.
Yeah, right. But it worked out. So I did get a degree in law.
Oh, that's funny. How did you meet your wife, Barbara?
But after I came got through law school, I moved into an apartment house over off of Hudnall and Lemon. And I met Barbara. She was teaching with another girl named Susan Humphrey. They had gone to North Texas State. She became a teacher, and they were teaching at different schools, but they were roommates. And so I was upstairs, and Barbara always tells a story that the first time we met, she invited us over for Christmas for Christmas, a Christmas party. Another friend of mine went with me. I mean, it was a very small apartment. So, she didn't know anybody that was Jewish, I think, at that time. And so she told me she wanted us, we could do popcorn on the Christmas tree. I didn't know how to do popcorn. So this friend of mine and I were sitting there drinking, and we were throwing popcorn to see if it would stick on the Christmas tree. So the first year, she had a Christmas tree. And the second year, we were now dating. We weren't dating at that time. Mm-hmm. And she had a Christmas tree, and she had Hanukkah candles. And the Christmas tree never came again, so that was it.
Well, she took to Judaism like...
Yeah, I always say that it was because of her that kept me very interested in Judaism. She did a lot of things. I did a lot of things because I thought it was important to her to have done this, to convert, and wanted to be a part of the Jewish people in the city of Dallas. And I think, as you know, she's done a lot of terrific things. She was president of Younger Set. She was one of the beginning people of Chai, and she's just done a number of. If she takes on a job, It is her job, it's not
I know
mine.
that. What things have you done in the Jewish community as far as organizations?
I was on the board here for a while. I was on the board of the Federation. I was on the budget committee for the Federation. I don't know what I was, how many other things that I've done. I've never been real interested in doing a lot. I've always been better at smaller committees that they might have asked me to be a part of. And mostly always seems to be budgets and money, so so that's probably where I do the most. Never been very much involved in Temple, although I'm a member of the Brotherhood, but really never did anything else that I can think of. Went to Israel. I've gone to Israel once. Barbara's gone about 5 times. You can see there's a difference in the way we think. I told her it wasn't a vacation. She said it wasn't supposed to be a vacation, so therefore you have to understand that. Anyways, she talks about it just the other day, about going back to Israel, and I said, I think it's very dangerous here, but it's always been dangerous. You just live, you just either do it or don't do it.
Yeah. You have children?
I have 2 children. I have a daughter that's 44 years old. I'll be 45, and I have a son, 41. Daughter has 2 children, 2 girls. My son has 3 children, and interesting enough, everybody's Jewish at this time. I'm shocked. Did not know that would happen, but I think that the reason they all are, or the reason they moved that, because Craig was not the son. He married a Jewish girl, and I mean, she's great. But I think that's because of Barbara. She pushed those kids to do certain things, and I don't think I had standing to push.
Did your mother push?
My mother, the only time my mother ever got involved in my life from a dating situation was that a girl called me up when I was in the 8th grade, a girl by the name of Gail Melidio. You might see her, they were from Highland Park. And she called me up to invite me to a sock hop or whatever it was. And in those days, of course, your parents had to take you because you didn't have a car. So I went over to my mother because the girl was on the phone, and I went to my mother. I said, Gail Melidio called me. She was really a cute girl, sweet girl. I didn't say that to her, but that's the truth. And she said, and I said, she had invited me to a dance. And my mother said, I see no reason for that. And I'm 14. I said, what? She said, and a lot different, because there wasn't any arguing. He says, I had to go back and tell her, I cannot go. And that was probably the end of me being involved at that time with non-Jewish kids on a social basis. Because then we were in, as I said, we were Young Judea, and then we went into AZA. We were members, of the Sheriff Israel situation, and never once got too involved with anyone else until I met Barbara. And that's what I always said. I always said, Barbara, I never asked my wife to convert, not once. And she was so much smarter than me. She said, if you're not looking out there, half these marriages are going into divorce. This is going to be a tough deal already. You're going to want your children to be Jewish. I didn't know I was going to want them to be Jewish, but I obviously did. And all of your friends are Jewish, and that's who we're going to run around with. So to make this work, this is what's going to happen. And it worked so far.
I think you're going to make it. Yeah.
Be really late.
Yeah. What advice would you give your grandchildren at this point on Judaism or any other value system?
I think the one advice I give anyone is to learn about Judaism, learn the value system of Judaism. I'm not going to tell you to be a religious Jew or that you need to do that, but you have to learn to make a value, to figure out what you want to do. I can't see anybody just deciding I'm not going to be Jewish or I don't want to do that. And I can't see anybody doing anything unless they learn about it. So I think education is so important. And I think education being Jewish is extremely important. I mean, we have some great people. We've done great things. Our whole history of being Jewish. We're still here. No one figured this was going to happen. And I think we've done some very, very important things for the world. So I just think if you go back to just on a smaller level, though, learn being Jewish. Learn about it. Take some courses. Understand it. A lot of my friends don't even religious, they're not religious at all, but they're very proud of being Jewish. They're very culturally Jew. They do a lot, some do a lot on charities, but yet you'll never see them in a temple or a synagogue. But and I know one friend of mine whose wife's not Jewish, and she keeps asking her husband, she says, why, you don't even go to the synagogue, you don't go to the temple. Why are you so religious? He said, you just can't understand it. It is a culture. It is much, much more than a religious situation. And yes, I'm not religious, but it is a culture, and I'm proud of being a part of that. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would give the advice, is learn.
You're still at Israel, Shereth Israel.
No, that's another story. That's a cute story. May not like this story, but so we're getting ready. She's decided that we're going to convert. She's going to convert. So this was 1968, January. So we go to meet the rabbi at that Shereth Israel, because that's where I had gone my whole life, and hadn't done much in the last 5-6 years, but my parents had always gone there. Anyways, we go to meet with the rabbi. His name was Shapiro. And he said, and we're sitting in his office and talking what we'd like to do. I was 26, she was 24 at the time. And he said, well, okay, listen. He said, how fast, how quickly does this have to be done? And I'm thinking that he means how quickly, do you want to get married this summer? Do you want to, when do you want to get married? Do you have to have a wedding plan? Well, he wanted to know because he wanted to know if she was pregnant. And she told him, I'm not pregnant. He changed. From not being pregnant, he then said, this is a 1.5 to 2 year, in those days, conversion. And I said, I never asked her to convert in the first place. I was 26. I was not interested in another 2 years of this stuff. Walked out of there, called my mother, and told her what was happening, and told her, I'm not doing this. So she called a friend of hers over at Temple Manuel, and we went to Temple. In those days, it was a one-on-one, and Barbara would, and the husband didn't go. Soon after Barbara converted, they made up, it all got to be a different situation. So you went with your husband or your husband with your wife, and you spent time with them, maybe 6-8 months, and you studied during the week. Barbara would go every Saturday and study. So that's when the conversion came. That's when we switched to Temple, and we've been to Temple ever since.
Who are your role models?
Oh, they're probably closer friends than you would think on a national level. Mm-hmm. I mean, a friend of mine, I don't know if you ever knew Don Fitch, or if you ever ran across him, crusty guy, honest, you knew exactly what he was thinking. Probably Don Zale, more of mentors, more of friends, people that I respect, Gerald Ray, value systems that they have. That's really, I don't go way out, I don't know enough about public figures. As more and more we find out about
I wasn't thinking.
Okay, as you go more and more get public figures, you figure out there's all the things you don't know about. So I'm not, anyways, those are guys that I believe in. A friend of mine, Stacy Roback, who passed away, not necessarily a role model, but certainly one of my very best friends.
Well, have I left anything out that you would want to add? One last question.
Sure.
And I always ask it. Did you, growing up in Dallas, meet with any anti-Semitism?
You know, I never really had it because, sort of going back to what I discussed with you before, even the kids in high school we didn't have we stayed in the Jewish group, and we went with a group. The high school went to was Hillcrest. It was very nice. Never had any issues. Ran around with a lot of the guys that were not Jewish, and never really had anti-Semitism that happened to me. I'm sure that it came about for different people. But I've always believed there's always an undertone. There's always a difference. You may not see it. Maybe the people I dealt with were smarter. They weren't overt about it. They didn't say anything and then say, "Oh, I've been saying this all my life." They just didn't say that. They just didn't talk like that. So, and I didn't remember ever, being on the outside for some reason. I think most of that was our choice. The group that I ran around with, it was our choice to stay with our group. I sometimes hope that I'm not the other way. I mean, I belonged to a country club, and one of the problems was that country club did not let Gentiles in forever. And finally, they started letting son and son-in-laws in, and son-in-laws in. And I was the membership chairman when this happened. And I'll never forget, one of the guys on my committee, older guy, had a daughter and a son-in-law, and son-in-law was not Jewish. And the question came up, we're going to vote on these people, because their daughters, the wife's parents were members. And he said, which was, just took me back, he said, if Joe wants us to come over to his country club, I'm more than happy to come to his country club, and I'm more than happy to invite him here. But I see no reason for him to be a member here. Well, to make a long story short, we did go get over that, and we then started at that meeting. So we did allow that, and it did work out fine.
This was the clubbing club?
This was the clubbing club. Well, Donnie Zale tells a story, and I guess this is not what you're asking, but Donnie tells a story about how years in the early 80s, a number of his friends with the Dallas Country Club said, "Look, we want to break this deal here now and maybe it was late 70s, want you to come and be a member of the Dallas Country Club," which was not letting Jewish people in. And he said only on one condition, and that is, if the Columbian Club will let Gentile people into the Columbian Club. So he went to visit the Columbian Club. They said, "No, we're not ready." So if there was anything that's reverse, so that was the end of his conversation with him. He said he just wasn't going to do that. It defeated him.
Boy, how things have changed.
Right, it really has.
Well, this has been great.
Well, I hope so.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm sure I could have gone hours and hours, a lot more than I thought.